Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my little podcast today. Of course, my name is Eden, and a little later we will have a little guest, and I will let them introduce themselves. But today we're going to be introducing a new topic, which is feminism in music, and I'm super excited. I'm really passionate about both of these ideas and what more we can do in the music world to help connect to feminism. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. So today, for my little podcast episode, we are going to be talking about feminism in music, which I'm super excited about. We will have a little guest later, and I'll let them introduce and explain a little bit about what they do, which is super exciting. But we're going to be talking a lot about intersectionality today, and I'm super excited. The first topic that we're going to talk about is gender bias in music and instrumentation. So those of you who don't know, I play oboe. I'm the only oboist at Coastal Carolina University, and I identify as female, which is super exciting. And hopefully we'll get some more oboists here super soon. But for right now, it's just me, and I love what I do, and I love that I can be here and do my own thing, especially as a musician and a feminist. So my first claim that I kind of wanted to talk about was how gender and instrumentation overlap each other, which is really interesting because when I first mentioned that I'm the only oboist here and I'm a female, that's a big deal. I got the wonderful opportunity to go to USC for a day and explore a little bit about their music department and their oboe studio, and I was so happy to see that a majority of their double reeds, especially oboes, are female, and it just absolutely warms my heart, and I'm so happy that they're doing what they're doing, and it just makes me very happy that going to a different school and seeing what they're doing. So the first thing is there is little to none information about non-binary double reed instruments, which is super sad to me because the guest will be on later are non-binary. So just seeing that and being in this environment where there is not a whole lot of that, seeing that makes me really sad, and that there's no information, and I feel like it really is such a new topic, so it makes sense that there's no information about it, but I wish there was more because it's not something you see. Like I said, I play oboe. My friend that will be on later, they play bassoon, and we are both double reed instruments. So today on the episode, we'll be talking and focusing a lot about double reeds and oboe and bassoon. Hello, and welcome back. So continuing our little talk about feminism and music, especially in the double reeds, I did want to mention first, I read a couple of articles, and the first one I found was a really good article. It was from 2018, so it's not necessarily new, but it is newer compared to a couple of the other ones I found. The first one talks a lot about men making up a majority of double reed instruments, and I never really thought about this until I was scrolling on Instagram, and one of my favorite, all-time favorite symphony orchestras is the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra because I used to live there. So I used to watch them perform all the time, but I never, I was so young, I didn't really think about instrumentation and who was playing the instruments. So just scrolling through Instagram, and I saw one of their posts, and a majority of the posts that they made, men made up the orchestra, not even necessarily just the double reeds, but the entire orchestra. And I kept scrolling, hoping to find some sort of picture of women, and finally when I got to the 6th slide out of the 10 pictures that they posted, was a picture with 2 women, surrounded by multiple men. And the two, out of the two, one of the women was an oboist, which was really great to see, because that hasn't happened in a little bit. And another one, I believe, was a flute, which does make a little bit more sense, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But just looking at the double reeds, it was a whole lot of men. And that's not the only orchestra. There's several problems within the symphony orchestra world, where a majority of the orchestra is made up of men. And nothing really gets talked about to include like women in symphony orchestras or music made up of women instrumentalists or composers. And I'm really thankful that I go here and I have Dr. Schultz, who is helping me and a lot of my other colleagues with all of that research, which is absolutely amazing. So I do want to thank him for that and bringing light to this school and the whole topic that a lot of other people decide to neglect. So that was the first pointer that kind of made me think about music in more of a feminist way, is thinking about how there's just very little representation of women. So, thank you. All right, and we are back. I did want to add in, previously, I mentioned the article that was in 2018, and I also wanted to mention that within that article, I found like a little picture, like a little diagram of, I believe it was just like the major symphony orchestras in America that it was made up of, but it was showing all of the different instruments and the percentage of male versus female. And for oboe, the percentage was 63% was male and 36% was female. And for bassoon, 66% were male and 34% were female. So that is a little frightening. I've always wanted to perform with a symphony orchestra, whether it be a soloist piece or just getting the opportunity to play with one would be phenomenal. And I never really thought about the main like top 10 symphony orchestras that everyone thinks about, including Boston, New York, Chicago, LA. It's insane to think about that. But if you go on their website and you look at all of the instrumentation, I can see how this really is a problem and how it really interlocks with gender. There are very little non-binary musicians that you can see, and that is another issue that I have with the symphony orchestras. And I think part of it is the huge stigma about gender, and you have to be a man to play these big, strong, like brass instruments, or you have to be a woman to play these little instruments like a piccolo or a flute or the harp. The harp is a huge instrument, but you have to have little dainty hands to actually play it. Just these huge stigmas. And another article I found that was published in 2020, so it's a little bit more recent than the other one. So these numbers are a little bit more accurate. The oboe percentage was the same as the first one, so 63 male and 36% female, which you can clearly see nothing has changed. And for bassoon, it was 76% were male and 23% were female, which was even worse than what it was in 2018. And I think just thinking about the like articles and what year they were published, 2018 was a while ago, 2020 more recent, but it was like right during / when like COVID hit. So I can see why those numbers are a little bit different, but still not great. The last little pointer that I want to talk about before I have my guest on this little podcast episode was feminine instruments versus masculine instruments. And I feel like this is a little bit more common, and it kind of goes back to like when you're in 6th grade and you're first looking at the instruments and you're like, oh, this one is cool, but this one looks even cooler. And coming from me, who didn't start on oboe, like I picked up oboe when I was in the 8th grade. I'm like, this is super cool. I love it. I love the way it sounds. I love the way it looks. Had no idea about the instrument until I got to like 8th, 9th grade. I picked flute because I thought it was pretty, and the sound was so reminiscent of everything I hear in the movies. You always hear flute. And now that I'm listening to it more, you always hear oboe, but it's never talked about. And you always hear bassoon. There are so many pieces from movies and TV shows that I can think of that have bassoon. And no one talks about the instruments because it's not a common instrument. So what makes me wonder why I picked oboe or why my friend picked the bassoon is the stigma between male versus female and what instrument you pick. Again, I really tried to find a lot of information about non-binary on this issue, and there was absolutely nothing, which is just, it's still crazy to me because it's 2023 and I feel like we should have more information about it, but also I feel like no one wants to talk about it. So feminine instruments kind of include more of a, like I said earlier, flute is mentioned, harp, sometimes French horn is pretty much the only brass instrument, but all of the other instruments, including oboe and bassoon, are all masculine instruments. And that's something that I want to start to change, especially in like my county, and thinking about what instrument you choose, why you choose it. Just the whole question is why. So kind of ending it there, and then the next time we'll be back, you will see my friend Spencer. Hello everyone, we're back. This is Spencer. Spencer, say hi.
Hello.
What are your pronouns?
My pronouns are they, them.
Perfect. And how long have you been playing bassoon?
I have been playing bassoon for 11 years.
Amazing. I love it. And you're a music major?
I am. Love it.
Love it. So slay. Today we're going to talk about female conductors and how when you think of conductors, you don't think of any female conductors. So what's one that you know of?
So the only female conductor that I can name is Marin Alsop. And I think she's most people know because she's like the first woman to conduct a major orchestra. But honestly, beyond that, I could not tell you the names of any other female conductors.
Right, and I can't think of any that are like even like 10 years ago or currently. She's pretty much the only one that I could think of, and even at that, I don't know a whole lot about her. Like it's still pretty vague, and I think I've only heard her name like a couple of times. It's not like very known, which is really sad because I feel like we definitely should know more and have more. And I think she's mentioned like how pathetic it is that there's not more female conductors, which is amazing that she is doing what she is doing. But I think it's like super sad. And like looking back in like the 19th century and the 20th century and like even like before that, just how little women were considered in the music industry. And how we couldn't perform or compose or conduct.
Right.
Like it's just it's crazy to me. So
yeah, absolutely. And like historically, in historical context, way back when, to the start of our earliest records of music, like women were not allowed to perform music. Like the music that we had was church music, and women weren't allowed to sing in the church. Right. And so it's kind of interesting to see how that progresses to today. And yes, like women are more involved in music now, but like we're not seeing conductors, like leaders of ensembles that are women. Like again, it's like I only have one example. Versus if you ask anybody in the music department, like who are some famous conductors, you're gonna get like Leonard Bernstein, or like if we're going modern, like there's like Jerry Jenkins, or like you know, all the big colleges around here. And like I guarantee you, if you ask most of our professors, they're gonna get to like at least two hands of conductors and not name a woman. Except for maybe Marin Alsop.
Which is crazy to me, and I think it's super sad. And like we don't talk about it even here, like in music school, we don't even talk about it. And I think it's crazy and it needs to be talked about. and I think it gives men a lot of the power, which doesn't help feminism in music. And I think we could do better, like, as a music industry in general. But also, like, I think of it, like, Taylor Swift has a song called The Man, and it's really about how much power men have over women. And if you think about it, every single time someone says, oh yeah, well, my boss, well, you're automatically going to assume your boss is a man. Right. And every conductor out there has all of the power. You're conducting an entire orchestra, which is a lot of power. So,
or like, even like, I guarantee you, like, every single time I've ever said, like, my band director, people always go, oh, what's his name? So
it's always a guy. And looking here in our county, pretty much all of the high school band directors that I can think of are men, which is sad. Like, I grew up here. It just shouldn't be like a thing. But also look where we are. Like, we're in Horry County in South Carolina, which is sad. So we're gonna kind of wrap it up with that. Absolutely. And I just hate that we have to wrap it up that way, but more positivity come. Well, it'll change. So
we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
We're working on it.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us. I love it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is great. We'll see you on the next episode, hopefully.